Hey guys, Jacob here. New Sounds and Old is the channel, and I'm coming to you from my music room. As always, very messy music room in Denmark. So, yesterday, on February 22nd, 2021, one of my favorite bands of the past 25 plus years decided to call it quits. They released a video on their YouTube channel, a 10-minute video called Epilogue, where basically stated that this is the end of the band. Um, this is the end of this project that they had been going on for almost 30 years, 28 years or so. The band in question is Daft Punk, the French electronic duo, and they have been very important to me right from the get-go, right from the first time I heard their debut single back in 1996 when they released it actually in 1995. The song called "The Funk." Um, Released it in 1995 in France, and then they got signed to Virgin and released it in 1996. And ever since I heard that song for the first time, I've just been hooked on Daft Punk. And uh, the the weird thing is that, or not the weird thing, rather, but the funny thing is that in the mid '90s, I mean, the entire electronic music scene was basically run by UK British bands or acts. So acts like FX Twin, this is his 1995 album, I Care Because You Do, um, uh, with the genre that people call IDM, intelligent dance music or something. You have the whole drum and bass scene with Goldie. Um, Also in the IDM, you had Square Pusher, Tom Jenkinson, who's still active today, thankfully. Fatboy Slim released his debut album in 1997. Of course, Prodigy had already two albums under their belt. In 1997, they released The Fat of the Land, which really was their big breakthrough. And of course, Chemical Brothers, who also in 1997 released their album Dig Your Own Hole, which was a huge hit and a follow up to Exit Planet Dust. So the music scene at that time, when it came to electronic music, like I said, was dominated by UK, British bands. And then suddenly something started in France. It just seemed that like there was um, a scene that just really broke through and just made it worldwide, led by people like Etienne de Crécy, a French DJ who released this compilation here called Super Discount in 1996. No, 1997 was released. And on this compilation here, you can find both Air and Alex Goffer, um, and Etienne de Crécy himself. This is a pivotal release when it comes to French electronic music from the 90s. You had a guy like Dimitri from Paris who released his debut album Sacre Bleu, which has this take on 60s French pop mixed with jazzy elements, soul, breakbeat, and so on. Great album. You had Bob Sinclair, who started out early in his career doing his version of disco and dance music. You, of course, had Air. This is from 1998, their breakthrough album Moon Safari. Laurent Garnier, um, a big techno DJ, released this album in 1998, 1997, also called 30. Following on, a couple of years later, you had Cassius, who had a big hit with this album here. And then, of course, came Daft Punk. Now, where's my Daft Punk pile? That's here. So, the two guys in Daft Punk are or were Thomas or Thomas Bangalter and Guy Manuel Onem Cristo. And they were in a band earlier in the 90s called Darling, named so after a Beach Boys song. Um, and they released, I think, a couple of singles on the label Duophonic, run by Stereolab, one of my other favorite bands from the 90s and still. And like I said, they released a couple of singles, and they got a review, a not so a great review in the British, in the English music magazine Melody Maker by a guy called Dave Jennings, I believe, who described the music as a daft, punky thrash. And this project only survived for like a half a year or something, and the two guys, Guy Manuel and Thomas, decided that they wanted to start a new project. They went to a big rave party in 1994 and said that this scene is just amazing, this music is just amazing. We need to do something in this. We need to create our own music like this. And they started producing some tracks and couldn't really find a name. And then they thought back to this old review in the Melody Maker, Daft Punky Thrash. Daft Punk. Maybe that is what our music is. Maybe that's what our music sounds like. Daft Punk. So they took that as their name and worked on some songs. And like I said, the first song that they released was the debut single, The Funk. And The Funk then was, as I said earlier, released worldwide on Virgin Records in 1996, and then in 1997 came their debut album Homework, which is just a killer of a debut album. The Funk obviously was a big hit. You might remember the music video. There's there's a big dog, like a guy in a dog suit, walking around New York, I believe, with a boombox on his shoulder, listening to that song, The Funk. And he goes about in the city, and for some reason, everyone finds him annoying. No one really wants to talk to him. There's some kids that mock him. There's a woman that he tries to be nice to and sort of flirt with, and she just wants nothing to do with him. But he has that track, the funk, playing on his boombox, and just giving him a bit of confidence. Um, and that video, I very much remember the first time I saw it. It was just a great video and a great song. Was followed up, of course, by Around the World, which was an even bigger hit, and I guess that really made the band big time. And with Homework, they also went on, I think, a world tour, which also brought them to Denmark. I think the Roskilde Festival, maybe. I think it was 1997 or 98. I wasn't there, sadly. That was, I think, the only time that they, no, that was the only time that they played in Denmark. So I never got to see them live. The tour that they did in 1997 was later, 2001. What did I say? Manifested on this CD here called Alive 1997, which is just a great piece of history when it comes to Daft Punk, and how how wild they were on this tour, and how they just took no prisoners. And the sound and the mixes on this album here, 45 minutes non-stop mix, live in Birmingham 1997. The feeling that you get from listening to this album here is just amazing. You really wish that you had been there. It took them 4 years to do a follow-up to their debut. So in 2001 came their second album, Discovery, which, if Homework hadn't uh, made them a huge name worldwide, then definitely this album did, with a lot of hit singles like One More Time, Aerodynamic, Digital Love, Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger. I think that song was sampled by Kanye West, if I remember correctly. Um, and this is just an amazing album. They kind of went more. So the first one was maybe a bit, a bit more housey and at times techno-y. Um, then the second album went more into like an early 80s boogie kind of sound at point or at times, still with the house feeling on many tracks. And there are some up tempo bangers on this as well. Great album. Um, I think I don't know what my favorite album is. This is up there. I mean, they only released 4 studio albums, but this is, yeah. It's hard for me to the the top three, top one, two, and three are just very difficult for me to place. But this is in the top three. Then once again, it took them 4 years to release their third album, which was Human After All. Now, this I think would be my least favorite of their albums. It's still very, very good, but I was kind of underwhelmed. I think I had very, very high expectations when this came out. It did give them some single hits like Technologic, and Robot Rock was also a single, I believe. Maybe also Human After All. Um, they sort of carried on the 80s sound of Discovery, but um, yeah, I don't know. Just the songs just to me aren't as catchy as the first or as the second album rather. Still a great album, um, and by this time they had already. I mean, really from the get go they were very determined on not showing their faces in public. By the time that they I think somewhere between maybe the second and third album, they just decided to go full on robot, and just they were never seen without robot masks and robot costumes, and I guess robot rock and human after all and so on. It really plays on that robot thingy, sort of like Kraftwerk did back in the day. But of course, Kraftwerk or Kraftwerk, showed their faces and so on. But 2005 came this album here, and then they also toured this album in 2007, so 10 years after their first tour. And the 2007 Alive tour was the last time that they basically played live on a worldwide tour, um, which again is very sad. It After this album, 2005, it took the band then 8 years before they finally released a new album, which then also turned out, sadly, to be their last album, and that was, of course, the 2013 release, Random Access Memories. I have this on vinyl as well. This is the only Daft Punk vinyl that I have, but I'm showing the CD as I've been showing CDs all this time here. Of course, Get Lucky, Lose Yourself to Dance. My favorite song on here is Giorgio by Moroder, the 9-minute epic track, track number 3 on this album here, and this is the last track on side 1 on the vinyl, I believe, which is an homage to Italian German legend when it comes to electronic music, Giorgio Moroder, who produced acts like Diana Ross. Um, what's her name? Who did Donna Summer? Donna Summer, I want to say. Diana Ross? Did he produce Diana Ross? I don't think so. Donna Summer he produced with I Feel Love, obviously. He had a big hit with that and also produced other acts, and did some albums of his own. And he's still alive and still, I think he released an album last year or the year before and toured that album. But it basically is Giorgio telling just briefly about the start to his career, and how hard he worked at the beginning of his career, how he did it, and it came up with the sound of the future, as he says it in this little interview that is um, uh, that is sampled on this track here. And the track just starts off with this really distinct Marauder-like 80s style, then breaks down with some string arrangements, and then goes full on orchestra with electronic bass and guitar and drums and keys and strings, and just ends in a cacophony of man, just pure bliss. Yeah. Sadly, this was to be their last album. Um, they have, as you may know, done some production for other acts like The Weeknd. They've done a lot of tracks with him. Um, I don't recall the song names right now, but they had some huge hits with The Weeknd. I Feel It Coming was one of the tracks that they did with them. All in all, Daft Punk, even though they released only 4 albums in 24 years, it's still a huge influence on so many people, and just what a mark they made on the electronic music scene. I also want to just quickly touch on some of the soundtrack music that they made. So Thomas Bangalter did the soundtrack to Gaspar Noé's brilliant, breathtaking, and horrendous movie Irreversible or Irreversible. This is a piece of art, and it is not for the faint at heart. It is one of the most brutal films that I've ever seen. Uh, it was um, it was featured at the Cannes Film Festival 2002, as it says here on the sticker. It's just I really don't know how to describe this film. I think that maybe it's best that you, if you are interested in this, that you read about it online. Irreversible or Irreversible is the name of the movie. Gaspar Noé is the instructor, and Vincent Cassel and Monica Bellucci are the main characters in this film. Oh man, it's not for everyone. It's not for the faint at heart, but it is a brilliant movie. And the score, that's what I wanted to talk about, was done by Thomas Bangalter. And the movie takes place in Paris, and there are some very, very hectic scenes. There's some very brutal, very, very, very violent scenes in this as well. And the music just reflects both the sadness uh, um, and the mourning and the aggressiveness and the wildness of Paris, and the, well, basically the storyline. Um, it's a great soundtrack. I actually have some of the singles that were released from um, from the soundtrack here. I have Outrage on 45-inch single. I think also Spinal Scratch maybe is on the album. That's also Thomas Bangalter. I also have tracks on The Rocks, which is probably not. This says Daft House in Paris. Um, that was not on the soundtrack. And also, when it comes to soundtracks, obviously Daft Punk also did the soundtrack to the remake of Tron, which is just another mind-blowing soundtrack. I don't have that on any format, unfortunately. And lastly, I just want to also, well, two things I want to sign off with. Um, you may know the song, but you may not know that Daft Punk was also involved in this. But you may recall the project called Stardust, and the track called Music Sounds Better With You. This is a double 45, not a double 45, double 12-inch single remixes of Music Sounds Better With You. So that was just, I think, one of the biggest house bangers of the 1998. So that was, you know, released shortly after Homework, actually, the debut album. Then this came out. It just had that French house sound, that Daft Punk sound. So you know, Thomas Bangalter was also involved in this. That was also a great Daft Punk-ish track. My favorite track, I think that anyone from Daft Punk was involved in, is this one. This is Together. It's a single-sided 12-inch single. It doesn't really say much on it. There's just the logo of the Roulette record label, and then on the other side here it says DJ Falcon and Thomas Bancalte, and the track is called Together. I'm gonna shut this video off, or shut this video down with just a short sample of this track here, which I think is even though Daft Punk did a lot of great tracks, I think that this is my favorite of anything that anyone from Daft Punk has been involved in. You may not know this song, but all in all, Daft Punk were very, very important to me and a lot of people. And the Roskilde Festival here in Denmark, that takes place every year. Obviously, not in these COVID years here. There are, I think, 90,000 people attending, 25,000 people volunteering. It's the biggest festival in Scandinavia, and one of the biggest festivals in Europe. And each year, the people behind the festival uh, do like a survey, if you will, and they ask people who are planning to go to the festival, what are your top 5 acts that you want to see? And for the past 10, 15, 20 years, in the top 5, I think every single year has been Daft Punk. Sadly, they never repeated their visit from the late 90s. I would have loved to see them live. That was not supposed to be, and now they are no more, sadly. Um, a big thank you to Daft Punk for making my life better for so many years, and big respect to their musical talent. And let's just see where they go from here. Maybe they will be individually involved in other musical projects. But yeah, if you're not familiar with Daft Punk, go check out their 4 albums. Go check out the 2 live albums to catch the feeling of a live show with Daft Punk. Go into their individual work, go into their soundtrack works. There's just so much great music to discover. Like I said, I'm gonna end with a sample of "Together" by DJ Falcon and Thomas Bancalte. I hope that the censors of YouTube won't block this. So yeah, signing off and saying au revoir, Daft Punk. Merci beaucoup.